Welcome back to BK Nothing But Nets podcast. I got a crew here. I got my co-host Pete. I got my co-host Dylan. Whoa, Dylan is known as Pete in the chat to one of the guys.
To one of the bozos, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, did that really happen?
It happened. Yeah, he kept calling him Pete.
Oh yeah, they keep calling. They thought I was you.
Guy.
And then I said that
that
wasn't my name, and now apparently I'm Pete. And even when they call me Dylan, they spell it wrong. So it's funny. Now it's a nice little meme.
My wife's name is Megan, and everyone spells it wrong, and it pisses her off. So whenever she wants to piss someone off, she intentionally spells their name wrong. Yeah, she has an H in her name, and they spell it without an H, or they spell it wrong 1,000 ways.
Yeah. My girlfriend's name is Kaylee, and she is Kaley, but a lot of people try and say Kayleigh, and I'm like, dude,
you get it wrong 1,000 ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I got my co-host Dylan over at NetsPress. It's good to have you on. He's going to lead most of the draft here, and I got Pete from Nets Fan. Pete, introduce yourself and tell me what you got going on.
What's up, everybody? Like you just said, my name's Pete, not Dylan. I host the podcast Net Fans You Know. You can check it out on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter, both Net Fans You Know. And that's it. I got a couple episodes dropping probably later this week, and you guys can check that out there at those places.
All right. We're gonna do a full live drafts, all 60 picks, all five picks from the Nets, but we're gonna do all. I'm struggling today. All 5 picks from the Nets, but we're gonna do all 60 picks. And Dylan, this is his forte.
Hey,
this Monday, is his bread and butter. So I'm gonna let Dylan do the driving here. All right.
Yeah, let's do it. If you want to share the screen, I'm actually gonna have to make some updates to my big board because there's a couple of players that are hitting the transfer portal and won't be in the draft. So we'll kind of make note of that when their names come around.
Quick question though. I don't know if you have any inside baseball on this, but I wanted RJ Lewis. Is he hitting the transfer portal? Is he not going to the NBA? Because that was kind of widely accepted that he was.
It sounds like his stock has risen enough to where he's going to go. The only way that I see him staying is maybe if one of Kadary Richmond or Aaron Scott decided to do a 5th year at St. John's. Because they were both seniors, so I'm not sure if they have eligibility to do a 5th year.
Why do you guys explain who that is? I have no idea who that is. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have no idea what you just said, Gary.
RJ Lewis.
Kadary Richmond, RJ Lewis, and Aaron Scott are St. John's guys. RJ Lewis was originally not even a projected pick this year, blew up as a junior at St. John's, 6'7" guard, plays the 2 and the 3. But yeah, he was averaging about 18.7 rebounds. Hell of a player, like an immediate plug-and-roll player in the NBA, probably. So I would expect him to go probably mid-second round, potentially in the top 43, top 44, depending on the team. But
that's kind of where he was projected. Yeah. All right, we're gonna get it. We'll see where he goes in this draft. All right, you ready, Pete? You ready? And Dylan?
Yeah, let's do it. I was going to say, quick mention, we're not going to do a lottery simulation, so we're just going based on how the picks are currently. Let's get into it. So first overall, I don't even have to explain this anymore. If you haven't watched Cooper Flagg, then you're living under a rock. He is unanimous number 1. This is by far what I would say is the best American prospect, born and raised American prospect since Zion, and potentially could have a higher ceiling than what Zion was expected to out of college. So to me, just an incredible all-around player. His key components is his defensive ability. The offensive ability is going to be unlocked here very shortly. It's kind of progressively gotten better throughout the season. And he's putting up numbers that no freshman has ever put up. So to me, it's unanimous. At number 2, the Utah
Wait.
Jazz.
I got actually a question. Let's go into a little bit. Listen, I know you guys want to do 2 rounds. Most people are not going to care about the second round. I think you guys should focus on the first round, especially with our these top picks, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying if he's so good, why would there was a lot of hate for him earlier in the year? Why is that? And what is
question marks?
What's the switch? What happened? Everyone's saying now it's a lock. Now he's number 1.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lock when he first entered college. Then it became a little bit of a debate once Harper blew up. to me, the biggest struggle with him and the biggest question marks with him was whether or not he was going to be able to shoot a sustainable 3-ball and be a consistent offensive piece. We've now seen he's very consistent in terms of the points per game that he can put up. He's putting up that 18 to 23 a game on average. The 3-ball has become more efficient. He's started to take a couple more here and there as well. Surprisingly, he's actually a better off the dribble 3-point shooter than he is a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Which could be an easy fix mechanic-wise. But to me, he's a guy that I don't see him being like a 28-plus per game guy in the NBA. I see him more along the lines of that 24 to 26, highly efficient, around like 50+%. The three is going to need a little bit of work, but he's a very dominant in the paint finisher because of his athleticism. And where he shines that most 18-year-olds don't is the fact that he's so mature defensively that he not only can lock down the 1 through 4, but he also is an incredible rim protector and perimeter defender. So to me, it is just blatantly obvious that at this point in time, he is the unanimous number 1. There's no more debate. It's locked in. Whoever gets it, whether they need him or not, he's going number 1. And the comparisons that I have for him still is Jalen Johnson and Kawhi Leonard. Like that's like my floor ceiling for him. If you guys remember Kawhi coming out of college, he wasn't the greatest offensive player. And over time, he progressively got better and better in terms of efficiency, in terms of shot selection.
I wanted to ask you about that because that's the comp. Because early on in his tenure out of high school and stuff, it was hard to comp him. They were saying Andre Carolina, but that's not it, right? It's way more than that. Yeah. And then Kawhi Leonard became the comp. And I wanted to point that out to people. Like Kawhi Leonard, his first, it was the 11 draft, right? He was
his
not
first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I said if you ever got that guy to 20, you're doing a great job with him offensively. And then when he went to Toronto, I was like, I don't think he's going to average 25 anymore because he's not in that offense. And then he blew up. He got, So, I mean, do you think he's that raw offensively, or do you think he's going to come into the league as a better offensive player than when Kawhi entered the league?
I think he's going to come in better offensively. He's by far a better 3-point shooter than Kawhi was.
I think so too.
The thing about Flag is, and again, I bring this up because this truly is his most valuable asset, and that's his maturity and IQ. The kid's supposed to be a high school senior, and he plays the game like a 10-year veteran. He is truly special in the sense that he's not going to take a stupid shot. His shot selection is incredible. His defensive IQ is off the charts. As a playmaker at 6'9", he averages over 4 assists a game. He just had 6, I believe, in their previous game against Baylor. Like, he is a guy that truly can do every aspect of the game at an elite level. And this is kind of that comparison, not comparison more so, but the reason why I've always spoke so poorly about a guy like Cam Thomas. Has the star potential, but only has one elite aspect to his game, which is scoring. Flag's coming into the league with about 3 or 4 different elite level talents, which is his rebounding, his playmaking, his defense, and his shot selection. The shooting efficiency from 3 needs improvement, and the overall points per game definitely could use some improvement, but he's also a plug-in system guy. You can put him in any system, and as long as you build it around him, he's going to perform and get you wins. He's an impactful winner on the court. So that's, to me, where his most valuable asset is his IQ and his maturity at the age of 18 already.
Can you address John real quick? It's a little bit off topic, but not really, because we're going to get to Queen's name pretty soon. Derek Queen hit the buzzer beater yesterday against Colorado State in epic game. He certainly traveled, but let's ignore that. There was certainly a travel, but we'll overlook that. It was a hell of a shot as the clock was expiring. That shot and his performance yesterday, do you think that raises his stock going into the draft?
I'm not sure how much you can raise his stock. I currently have him on my big board at 9. I'm definitely going to probably bump him up to 8 over Trey Johnson. But it really depends because as a player currently, he is better than Kaman Malawak. But
he's saying one shot is going to raise his value. I don't think one shot is going to raise his value, right?
Let me ask you a question, Pete. Do you remember the name Bryce Drew?
It sounds familiar, but I'm gonna concede here.
He played for Valparaiso. They were like a 14 seed that upset a 3 seed because he had a monster game and hit a 3 at the buzzer from like half court to beat him. He's like running around the court. It's one of those famous scenes they always saw on CBS, right? He's like flopping on the floor and stuff, going crazy. He wasn't on anyone's draft chart. After he hit that shot, he got drafted late in the first round. I'm not saying that this one shot is going to raise his draft status. I'm just saying I've seen it happen before to lesser players, right? One game, not one shot, but one game in a big spot raises people's draft status. I've seen it before. Like look at the name Bryce Drew. Yeah,
that GM should be fired. By the way, if he let one game affect him. But that's fair. I don't know the player, so I'll concede there. But I would really hope an NBA team would not be swayed by one game. I could see this, right? If you already like Derek Queen, I'm a big Derek Queen fan. We'll get into it later.
Yeah.
If you could see him playing in a game like this, I wouldn't say the game-winning bucket, but playing in a playoff-like atmosphere like March Madness could raise draft stock, right? I wouldn't say the one shot, but the overall game and performance during March Madness might help him. That's what I would say.
All right, let me get back to Dylan. We're all unanimous. Any other thoughts on Cooper Flagg before we move to the number 2 pick, which I think is also unanimous at this point?
No, I think we're good. We covered it all.
All right, number 2. This was a debate. If you go back 6 months ago, Ace Bailey was expected to go number 2. They were talking that he could actually go number 1. Dylan Harper took major step forward, so I'll let you roll with this. Who's number 2?
Yeah, Dylan Harper, without a doubt, is number 2. This is one of my favorite players in this year's class. Maybe even a little more so than Flagg, only because of the simple fact that I think, especially if Brooklyn has the chance to land him, which in this scenario they don't, it's just such a fun fit for anywhere that he goes. He is Cade Cunningham 2.0. There's really no other comparison that I see that matches more perfectly than Cade. Very similar style build, shot selection, playmaking ability, defensive ability. To me, the upside is through the roof. I see him as an all-star within his first 4 seasons if he truly does play the way that everyone is expecting him to. So I really don't have much more to say. Dylan Harper at 2 is a lock, no matter what team's there.
All right. I want to ask you, I understand that it's going to be Flagg 1 and Harper 2. I'm not pushing about that back against. That's what it's going to be. It's obviously going to be Flagg 1, Harper 2. I'm asking you for your if I gave you your GM hat and the Nets were picking 1 and you couldn't make any trades, you had to sit and pick at 1. Would you take Harper or Flagg?
I'd take Flagg. You can't pass up on him. I think the fit for Harper is much better for what we need. But when you're thinking about the long-term success of a rebuilding organization, you need to draft the best player possible. Especially when you have multiple picks, you have to take the best player possible with the first pick. So even though I don't agree with it, say Brooklyn lands at 8 and Trey Johnson's there, maybe you have to take him, because at the end of the day, I think it's very known that Cam Thomas isn't the focal point moving forward if you draft a guy that is going to be better than him. And I think anybody within the top 8 outside of Kasper Siakatronis and Derek Queen are probably guys that are going to be better than him in this league. So to me, again, I think if you draft Flagg, that puts you in a position where you can draft a guard later in the first round, and then also a center, which will fill out the roster very nicely. But that also puts you in a position for next season to see how the young guys develop. If they're overachieving, you go star hunting. If they're not, bottom out. Darren Peterson is right there next year. AJ DeBansta, Cam Boozer, Noah Ament, Caleb Gaskins, Caleb Wilson, Nickel Brown. Like, there are a ton of players next season that you could put around Cooper Flagg and these draft picks this year that really could catapult you into what Boston did, similar with their retool, I guess you could say. Was they were still a contender and playoff team at the time, but realistically, the 2 guys that they drafted have been the focal point for them the past 6-7 years. And I think that's something similar that Brooklyn could achieve if they're able to find a way in landing a top 2 pick.
If they do draft second, right, and obviously it's probably going to be Harper with the need and the talent, what can we expect? Everyone keeps on saying Jalen Brunson. This guy's like Jalen Brunson. And then I also hear, he can hit the big-time shots, but does he have the blow-by speed? Is that a concern at all for you?
No, not at all. To me, it's not even Brunson as the comparison. I truly do believe it is Cade Cunningham. Cade is not the quickest guy in the world, but he knocks down the shots. He's efficient. He's an incredible playmaker. I think Cade Cunningham is a better player than Jalen Brunson, regardless. That's, Nets Knicks bias aside. I truly do believe Cade Cunningham's a top 15 player in the NBA, and he should be within top 5 of the MVP race because of what he's done for Detroit this year. So to me, Harper is Cade Cunningham. I see that in full.
Go ahead. I was going to say, so let's say the Nets do get him, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be something that I would look for negatively, right? What might he struggle with the team like the Nets? We have a lot of Nets fans watching, so I'm going to get a little Nets view here. What would be an issue on this Nets team you might see with a Harper?
I really don't see a negative to his game right now. He's been above average height point guard. He is a very efficient playmaker. He's efficient from the field. His shot selection is good. He can finish above the rim. He can finish at the rim. He can hit the mid range. He could hit the corner three. He could shoot off of the catch and shoot. There's really not much negatives to his game. And also, when you think about what Jordy Fernandez has done this year for 3 different point guards, you've had Dennis Schroeder, D'Lo, and you've even had Cam Thomas play it at times. All of those players have looked really well under Jordy. So to me, bringing in a guy like Harper, who doesn't really have a negative to his game, I think that only increases the upside that he has within the NBA.
Last question, and then I'll throw it back to Gary. What do you think about him playing with CT, Cam Thomas? Would that be a good fit? Would that be a bad fit?
I think it's a perfect fit. I think it's a perfect fit. I think it, and I said this before when we were talking about, if you had number 1, do you go Flag or Harper? I mentioned that I think Harper is actually a better fit than Flag for Brooklyn. I truly believe if you go with Harper, that unlocks Cam Thomas to kind of lift the weight of him being a full-time playmaker off of him and solely focus on the offensive ability in terms of scoring while also trying to focus on the defensive end. It's very hard for players to focus on all 5 levels of basketball, right? You say the 5-star tool athlete, right? It's usually used in baseball, but it could also be used in basketball. Shot selection, offensive ability, playmaking, rebounding, defense. I think those are the main 5 keys in basketball as well. So to me, him not having to focus on all of those kind of unlocks more of the potential that he has as a scorer. And it also unlocks more potential with Dylan Harper in becoming an even better playmaker than he already is. Like I said, I think Cade is his ceiling. I could see him being a guy that puts up 24 plus a night and 8+ assists a night, but I think that he needs to be put in the right situation to do that very early in his career, and I think that the perfect fit for him right now is Brooklyn.
All right, I think 1 and 2 are unanimous. I like the comps. Kawhi Leonard-ish and Cade Cunningham, I think are correct comps. Now, like I said, if I was Sean Marks and I was picking number 1 for the Nets, I would take Harper, but I don't think there's any debate that Cooper Flag is going to go number 1 and Harper's going to go number 2. I think that's settled science at this point. Yeah. You ready to move on to number 3?
Yeah, let's do it. I see you've got Charlotte here, and this is where I'm going to take a different approach. I know that you and I may not agree to this to certain extents, but there's about 3 or 4 teams, if they were to land the number 3 pick, I see them going with this player rather than the player that's expected, and that's VJ Edgecombe, and I see you have Charlotte here. I think Charlotte and VJ is a perfect fit. To me, if they are trying to keep LaMelo happy and build something around him, you need to put a guy next to him and Brandon Miller that can also play both sides of the floor. LaMelo's injury history causes a bit of a not great efficiency in terms of his defensive ability. To me, VJ is probably the best defender at that 6'5" mark in this year's draft, specifically as a shooting guard. The upside for him is through the roof as well as an offensive player. He's had some struggles consistency and efficiency wise, but the defensive ability has been there throughout the entire season. His athleticism raises him to be an even better defender. If you watched the Baylor game against, who did they play in the first round? Was it Mississippi State? Whoever they played in the round of 64, if you watched them, you would see that his athleticism single-handedly won them the rebounding battle. He may not have pulled down a ton of rebounds, but the fact that his athleticism was able to tip passes to teammates for rebounds and start fast breaks, the way that his athleticism in terms of shot blocking or just in terms of rim protection, the way that he was able to deflect passes, everything defensively for him has a ton of upside. And I think he has a ton of offensive upside as well that needs to be unlocked in the NBA. So I think Charlotte and LaMelo is the best fit for VJ Edgecombe if they get the 3rd overall pick. So yeah, let's go VJ Edgecombe here at 3.
All right, Gary, I want to cut in here very, very quickly because I'm not gonna lie to profess to be one of these super draft gurus. There's a couple players like I kind of focus on. VJ is one of them. The big knock on him is the height issue, right? I keep on hearing from people like how can I say this, like scouts and and player agents I talk to, that they think he's 6'2". I heard this from two different people. They think he's 6'2". They think with shoes he might be 6'4", but he's actually 6'2". And that's enough to kind of scare a lot of teams. Keep in mind, this kid is what, 18 years old? Last year, he played in the FIBA tournament for the Bahamas. He was putting up 20 points. I think he averaged around 15 points a game as a kid playing against men. There's a lot of talent here, a lot of explosiveness here. It looks like he's been able to shoot the three well in college. Defense looks pretty good for someone who's 6'2". Are you concerned about the height at all? I'm a little concerned.
I'm going to say no only because I just looked it up, and it is correct. Anthony Edwards is only 6'4", you know? And to
We'll
me,
see at the
he's one of the...
combine, but if he is 6'2" without shoes,
If
I
he's
don't know. Is
6'2",
the
it could
talent
definitely
enough?
raise some
Maybe,
questions.
probably,
Yeah,
but
if he's
I don't
6'2",
know.
it
That
could raise some
concerns me.
questions and maybe drop his stock. But to me, when you have that level of athleticism and the strength that he has as a defender, I don't think it matters too much. I wouldn't personally be worried about it because he also did show signs of being a really good playmaker at Baylor. If you remember at the beginning of the season, his efficiencies and scoring numbers were horrible. So what did he do? He was averaging over 5 assists. He's kind of dropped down to like that 3.7, 3.8 assists per game since his scoring has gone up. But he has shown signs of becoming a playmaker as well. So to me, even if the height is a concern, he is a guy that could potentially transition into an athletic combo guard that can play the one. So to me, it doesn't really matter too much with his height.
When we did the last show, you kind of comped him. You said a comp for an upside was Jaylen Brown, right?
Yeah.
I don't disagree with the upside. Like I think the upside and everything you said, he's explosive. He's a hyper athlete. He can handle the ball. Offensively as a scorer, I don't see a refined skill set, right? So I agree with you on the upside. Where I back down is the floor. Like I think his floor is Emmanuel Mudiay. I really do. Like I get the upside. I also think like depending on how much he develops, he could just be a raw athlete that doesn't really turn into much in the NBA like Mudiay. Like he'll have some games where he scores and stuff, but ultimately I see an athlete who happens to play basketball, not necessarily a baller, if that makes sense. I don't see a guy here with a refined offensive skill set in Edgecombe. What are your thoughts on that?
I disagree. I've been able to watch a good amount of his games this year. When you look at a player and some of the immaturities that they may have to their games, if they have the level of athleticism and defensive tangibles that VJ has, 9 times out of 10, they usually end up doing pretty well in the NBA. So to me, I still think the upside is there. It's worth the risk. And especially for a team like Charlotte, who's kind of in the midst of fighting whether or not they want to keep LaMelo or not, if he's maybe even happy there or not, I think this is the best fit that you can put next to them because they tried to move Mark Williams. It didn't work because of his physical. I know that they want to still move him, but are they willing to take a lesser price than what they were going to get from the Lakers originally? I don't think so. And not to mention, it's going to raise a lot of question marks with other teams who are trying to trade for Mark Williams on what his value actually is. So to me, I don't think they're going to be able to move off of him this year. And to me, it was either VJ Edgecombe or Kaman Malawak for the Hornets, no matter what. So if they can't move off of Mark Williams, I think you have to find that secondary position of need, which is the 2 guard. If you have a starting 5 that consists of LaMelo, VJ, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams, bearing health, that's a play-in team with ease. So to me, I think VJ is the best fit for them there at 3.
All right,
I'm going to ask Gary, if I can ask the Nets question real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so obviously, if this was the Nets in this position, it might be different. But since we're talking about VJ right now, I'm going to ask the Nets question. How do you feel about VJ and possibly Cam Thomas playing together? I know I don't want to keep on asking the same question. How do you play with Cam Thomas? But these guys are both short. One is known for at least good defense. CT, poor defense, although I think he's getting better. Would that be a concern for you? I think that's a major concern for me. I think you'd have to pick one of the two.
Yeah, to keep the answer short, I completely agree. It's an issue for me. I don't like the idea of having undersized guards, especially 2 players who primarily play the 2. To me, if you're going out of your way to draft like a Jeremiah Fears, who's only 6'4", but he can primarily play the point guard, then I'm all right with it. And again, I think the main thing that people are forgetting as Nets fans, even though a lot of us don't want to believe it, Cam Thomas really isn't the focal point of this team moving forward. It's these next 2 years worth of draft picks. So whatever they decide to do with these 2 picks is going to determine what his future could potentially be here, right? Say they are able to draft Dylan Harper. All right, you're giving Cam Thomas like a 2-year window now where let's see how it works, but if it doesn't work, we're going to trade him. If you draft a guy like VJ or a Trey Johnson, then to me, he's on the table immediately, potentially as a sign and trade, maybe a trade deadline piece, maybe next year during the offseason to move up into the draft. I don't know. But to me, there's certain positions that you can draft and certain fits that work well with Thomas. Trey Johnson, VJ, those are 2 guys that I don't see working with him.
I want to, before we get to number 4, I want to ask you a question. We have, we're going in order here, right? So the Pelicans would pick 4. If this was to play out in real life, and this was what we were looking at in June, I know we're not doing trades here, but the Pelicans obviously have a glaring need as a big. They could take Maluak here, but they're overdrafting him. Do you think this is in real life? This is a spot where the Nets could try to package picks with Ace Bailey sitting there to try to move up to 4 to get Ace Bailey, and then Pelicans could then take Maluak at 6 and then have additional draft capital? Like, is this a position that the Nets would try to trade up to and get if this was in real life?
I definitely believe so. I think the only problem is you got Philly sitting there at 5, right? Embiid's health is a big problem. Do they look to move him some point in the near future? I think they would probably go Maluak potentially at 5. So is New Orleans willing to, give that up for somebody else? Maybe, because in all honesty too, they could go out of their way if they move on from a Zion type of player. If they move him for a center, you can draft Trey Johnson, who would be a perfect fit next to DeJounte Murray, right? You could go Kasparis Yakatronis there, who again would be a nice fit next to a DeJounte Murray. So they have 2 guys who are making big money in CJ and Zion that they could look to move off of at some point. But to me, if they're trying to keep them and still contend with them, which they very well could, like if you look at their team on paper, you have DeJounte, CJ, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Zion. If you draft Maluak, you still have Alvarado and Brandon Boston off the bench. They still have depth. So to me, they're a team that's kind of like a piece away and one lucky, healthy season away from being a potential threat in the West. So to me, I think they stick and pick there at 4. If they have any feeling that Philly at 5 would go with Maluak.
All right, so let's sit and pick here at 4. Is it Ace Bailey or who is it?
We're gonna go with Maluak there. I don't see a need as to why. And this is the furthest I've had him fall, which is why I kind of like doing lottery simulations more, because I don't believe Ace should fall past 4. But at the end of the day, when you don't need a player, when you have so much depth at that position, right? You have Herb Jones, you have Trey Murphy, you have Brandon Boston, and you have Zion Williamson. You really need to draft properly rather than potential skill set.
So 5 minutes to go here in the
so yeah, I think Maluak would be the pick there at 4.
Just 8.5 points, 7 rebounds. He didn't play a ton of minutes specifically early. Just a little bit more thoughts on Maluak and why, like, his stats may be underwhelming. If you haven't watched him, why his stats might be a little underwhelming, just 8 and 7.
Oh, one last thing. 1 second before I cut. Can you get the comment down? No offense to Jonathan, but I can't see the screen unless you can like pick it up a little.
No, that's my bad.
There you go. So the people could see what's going on.
I'm a Duke fan. I've been for a little over 16 years. I was a fan when Kyrie committed there. I've stated that numerous times. When you watch Duke games, you see how impactful he is when he does get his minutes. He is he is the best rim protector in this entire draft class. He is, to me, a more offensive, polished version of Mark Williams coming out of college, who was also a Duke center. Again, the biggest question marks are going to be his conditioning and health. There are times where his conditioning can play a factor in the reason why he doesn't see large minutes. So there's definitely room for growth there. But again, he's another one of those guys who's one of the youngest players in this draft class. For a team like New Orleans, who needs a big man desperately, this is without a doubt a no-brainer for me. So to me, the upside there as a top-tier rim protector in stretch 5 is there. Like you could see the stats. He was shooting 70% from the field. He knocks down threes. If you looked at his first-round matchup in the tournament, I want to say he went 2 for 3 from 3. The upside there is enormous. If he can get more touches in the paint and more minutes, you'll see those numbers inflate tremendously. I think actually, if you go over to Tankathon, I'll look it up real quickly while we move on to the next pick. But his per 36 numbers are through the roof. I'm looking it
Yeah,
up
I
right
just
now.
wanted to explain it. Like, if people aren't familiar, why am I drafting a guy who's averaging 8 and 7 in top 5? All right,
Malawak's per 36 is 14.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, two blocks, 70% from the field, 25% from 3. His advanced stats show that he would be a 73% true shooting rating, and his NBA 3-point percentage would be about 32.5%. So the upside's through the roof. And I think when you look at the advanced metrics, that's going to definitely catapult him higher than a guy like Derek Queen, who to me is still the best center prospect coming out of this draft, just in terms of statistical numbers. He's also a 20-year-old freshman. But when you look at the upside, it's similar to how Charlotte drafted last year with Tejan Saloon. Saloon was not projected top 10, and they took him at, 7? The upside is what really matters sometimes for some of these younger rebuilding teams. So Malawak at 4 makes a ton of sense.
But let me ask you a question over here. I'm sorry to cut you off, Gary. Is the difference between Malawak and Ace Bailey like that little? If I'm a team that's getting, let's face it, we're in the lottery. We're not a good team. Yes, they have some good veterans who got hurt and whatever. But if I'm them, I want to get the best player available. And if I can get Malawak later, maybe you trade Ace Bailey, you trade down. You could trade Ace to another team if he's still available. But I would have to think the talent level between them would be small for something like this to happen.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, to me, what do you want? Do you want a guy who could potentially be a top tier rebounder and shot blocker who has the ability to space the floor? Or do you want a guy who's going to give you potentially 25 plus a night and be one of the most absurd athletes at 6'10" since Kevin Durant? I don't know. I think to me, Ace Bailey is by far the better raw prospect. But in terms of boom or bust, I would say Ace probably has the highest this year. Like, he's either going to be incredible or fall on his face. Come on, very similar. So you'd have
Malawak in like your top 5. Like, we're looking at what they think is going to be, the top.
In terms of the teams that have the potential to select within the top 5, Toronto could use him. Charlotte could use him.
I'm saying talent-wise. Forget about that. Let's say they're going to take the best
talent-wise, he's not top 10. Talent-wise, he's not top 10.
So this is a big reach, then, you would say?
I don't think it's a big reach.
It's not a big reach just because of the upside.
Let me give my thought. Yeah, and the downside, the downside is he's an all defensive player without much offensive game. The upside is he's the best player in the draft. He can average 20 a game and give you and be a game changer on. Like, the upside is through the roof, I think, on Malawak. The downside is, okay, he's not a great offensive player, but he still gives you game-changing defense. He's still one of the best rim protectors in the league. He can still he can do so much defensively that, even if he doesn't develop offensively, it's still not a bad pick. Like, you got a good player at 5 or 4.
Yeah, no, to me, I see him being a mixture of Mark Williams and Clint Capella. And if that's the worst that he is, I mean, that's a starting big man in this year's in the modern NBA. So I don't think it's necessarily a reach. I just think there's certain teams within these ranges that need to draft based on need rather than best available.
I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, because like I said, Philly is kind of like in dire need of a good pick this year, if they even are able to keep their pick. Charlotte, they're a one piece away from maybe being able to keep LaMelo happy. Same thing in New Orleans, they're a piece away from actually maybe being a contender again in the West. Toronto, if they strike big on a guy like VJ Edgecombe, if they boost up to 3, they're immediately in play-in contention with Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes. So there's players that can mix and match in certain ranges depending on the teams that's there.
And let me get in real quick. And this is why I was asking, if a trade would be possible here, right, for the Nets to get it, because I don't see Ace Bailey. If they're going to keep Zion, I wouldn't put Ace Bailey and Zion together. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me, right? Like, they're both going to fill a lot of space. One guy is 6'6" and built like a truck. The other guy is 6'10" and built like it's not. You're not going to maximize either player in that. There's a glaring weakness with New Orleans. It's obviously they need a big man, and Malawak would be the absolute perfect fit. But at 4, you are overdrafting him, right? But you're still getting a good player, so maybe you do it anyway. All right, let's move to 5, because this is why I said there's a big difference between 5 and 6 for the Nets. There's a huge difference between 5 and 6 for this reason. All right, we're at number 5, Philly.
Philly ends up getting Ace in this scenario, and the reason for it is the Philly is that team that's one piece away and just health away from being a contender again in the East. To me, you have to go with best available. You have Jared McCain coming off the bench, maybe even potentially a starter next year. You have Maxey. You have Paul George if he can get healthy for next season. They really don't have a 4. And to me, if you're able to kind of transition Ace into a 4, I mean, at 6'10", there's no doubt that he should be able to play the 4. And if you're playing next to a guy like Paul George, who throughout his career has been known as an incredible defender, I think he can learn a lot from him there. So to me, Ace at 5 just makes perfect sense for Philly.
I agree. And this is why I got to get 5, not 6. Kasparis, Trey, Igor, I think there's a big drop now in upside. There's one guy I would look at. I know who I'm taking if I'm the Nets, but let's see if Dylan agrees.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I said, to me, there's a big drop off at 5 now. Like, this is why it was so important to me to get 5, not 6. Right?
See,
like, now
I think it's 6. I think
Okay.
it's 6 mainly for this reason, and we're going to draft him here. Take Jeremiah Fears for the Nets.
Okay.
I got him over Kasparis Yakachonis. I have him as a better fit than Trey Johnson. To me, if the Nets want to potentially throw a perfect fit in the long term under a Jordi Fernandez system, there's 2 teams to me that make sense. I should say 3 teams that make sense for me with Fears, and that's Brooklyn, Miami, and Houston. And to me, you lose out on Malawak, who has the highest upside at the big man position that you probably need improvement at. You miss out on the wing position because there is a insane decline in terms of the top 2 wings and the wings moving forward in this draft class. So to me, you got to go with the position that you need most, and that's point guard. You can see the stats right there, averaging 17, 4, and 4, roughly 43.5% from the field. He is, to me, a mixture of a Trae Young and Ja Morant. That's what I say, right? He's got the playmaking upside of like a Ja Morant with less athleticism, but he also has the scoring and clutch ability and more of the pace to his game as a Trae Young, right? He's not as athletic and explosive as Ja, but he can play make similar to Ja. He doesn't have the playmaking aspect and maybe the range that Trae Young has as a scorer, but he's a little bit stronger as a point guard with similar offensive abilities in terms of shot creation. So to me, I love that comp for him where I think he can be a star in this league without a doubt. And especially if he's put on the right team, which to me, like I said before, Jordi Fernandez has been great with point guards this season. They're calling him the point guard whisperer. To me, if you fall to 6, Fears is probably the best consolation pick you can get if you miss outside of the top 5.
This is who I was taking to, and I watched a lot of Fears. Being a Texas fan, I just watched a lot of Oklahoma because I hate them. He's really good, and this is who I was going to take too. His name was a little down. I wanted to ask you: would you classify him as a score by today's standards, a score first point guard or a pass first point guard? Because he's kind of both, right? Like when he's not cooking offensively, he can dime you up and drop 10 assists. Like he's a really good two-way point guard in the sense that he can dime you up, he can run the point, or he can score 30 if you need him to. Like I'm a big fan of Fears. And what were your thoughts on? Would you classify him by today's standards as a pass first point guard or a score first point guard?
I'd actually consider him as a pass first. If you watch the games in Oklahoma, like he's not going out of his way to find shots. They come fluidly. Like he plays within the same motion throughout the entire game. There's just not a lot of talent at Oklahoma, which is why the playmaking stats are a lot less than what you see. To me, though, yeah, I would consider him to be a pass first with the upside of a score. That's why I compare him to Ja Morant, right? Ja averages around that 7 to 8 assists per game mark. He was previously a 25-plus per game guy in terms of scoring. He's kind of dropped down since the injury and suspension last year. But to me, that's a perfect range of what you could see potentially with a Jeremiah Fears, like a 22 to 24 point per game guy. If he starts hunting more shots, he could reach into that 25-plus per game caliber. But the playmaking aspect to his game, to me, I can see 6+ assists after his first season potentially. So especially if they fill out the roster around him nicely and they don't give him an Oklahoma-style product like he had to play with this year, the assist numbers are going to go much further up.
Pete, are you familiar with Fears, and what are your thoughts on this pick taking a point guard who can score and dish?
I'm going to be very, very boring here. He's my pick also. I think you guys just said a lot of great things about him. I just think he has that it factor. I don't know. He just looks like a pro amongst college kids. I'm not sure what it is. You know, he
And the
was.
funny part
I,
is he's actually the second or third youngest player in this draft class. He was another he like Cooper Flag were supposed to be high school seniors this year. He reclassified. So he is still 18 and like a true 18. He's not turning 19 by draft night. He will be 18 on draft night, I believe. So the upside is through the roof with him.
Yeah, he was a fast riser. I remember early in the year, I think he was in the teens, even 20s at the very start of the year.
Yeah, I don't
He-
even think I had him in the top 20.
Yeah, he turned it up. He's already, I think he's a lock to be in the top 10. I'd be shocked if he wasn't, in my opinion. Two very quick questions. You could just say yes or no to the first one. Is the height the issue? Because we said with VJ, he's 6'4". That was an issue. Fears is also 6'4". That an
When
issue?
you have the solidified playmaking ability that he has, again, I think the most important aspect moving forward in this rebuild is the players that you're drafting now, not the fit next to Cam Thomas, right? If you draft a
Absolutely.
Harper, then you can maybe try and focus a bit more and give an extra year or two to a guy like Cam Thomas. But if you're drafting the best player available and the best fit available, and that kind of contradicts how Cam Thomas's fit could be here long term, I look that way, because to me, the player that you draft this year in the top 7, hopefully, is the person that you're going to be building around. It's not Cam Thomas, because whether you like to hear it or not, again, he's a very one-dimensional player, and not to mention he was picked in the 20s. Like there are some politics in between being picked in the top 10 versus being picked in the late first round. Like you're going to be treated a little bit differently as more of a focal point moving forward as a top 10 pick than you would be as a guy drafted in the late 20s. So to me, that's not my worry, especially when you have a talent like Fears. You take him, especially knowing that he's not going to be there probably past 8 anymore. There was people who were projecting him and mocking him around that 11 through 14 spot. To me, he solidified himself as a top 8 pick, especially if Miami is able to land within the top 8. I don't see him falling further than 8.
Last question, then I'll shut up. Is Kasparis, or whatever this guy's name is, I always mess it up. Is he the
Jonas?
only competition at this spot? Because I know,
Yeah.
I think most. Well, I'm not gonna say I know, but I think most Nets fans want us to get a point guard in this draft. Would he be the competition at this spot for Fears?
At this spot specifically, I don't know. I actually think the competition for Brooklyn here would be Derek Queen. And the only reason I say that is because I've watched Jonas over the past month. To me, I don't see anything that screams elite potential all-star. Like to me, he's going to be a very, very good and key player on a team in terms of a high caliber role player. But to me, I don't see a guy that's giving you 22 plus a night. I don't see a guy that's giving you, 6+ rebounds or 6+ assists. Like I can see him being a very good player, but not the level of a player that you want when you're trying to rebuild your team, which is why I actually have Kasparis probably falling outside of the top 8. If you looked at his 2 games in March Madness, I want to say he combined for over 13 turnovers. It was very, very poor playmaking, even though the assist numbers were high. His ratio in terms of assist to turnovers was not great. So to me, I have him falling a bit further in this draft than maybe most people will, and maybe what will happen in real life. But in terms of what I've seen, I have him falling, and Fears being the solidified second best point guard in this class.
All right, let's. I know we're on a little bit of a time frame. Let's try to get through. I'm interested in this pick, but I want to try to get through these so we can get to the next pick. Number 7, Toronto is up.
Mm-hmm.
I know who I think they're taking, but I'll let you go.
It's a tough pick here because it really depends on which direction they want to go in, right? Do they want to keep Emmanuel quickly as the long-term point guard, or do they want to keep RJ Barrett as the shooting guard to play alongside Ingram and Scotty Barnes? There's already been rumors about RJ's departure in terms of trade rumors. So to me, I'm going to go with the replacement for him, and that's Trey Johnson. To me, you get a high caliber scorer next to Brandon Ingram. Scotty Barnes really hasn't shown that he can be a consistent scorer in the NBA, but he does everything else really well, right? He's a very good defender, a very good playmaker, a very good rebounder. To me, I think he's most valuable there. Keep him there and put an extra scoring option next to Brandon Ingram. And to me, that's Trey Johnson. That's 6'6". He's Cam Thomas, but 2 inches taller and much more polished coming out of college.
He can handle the ball better too. He could
the ball better. He can defend better. He can play make better. And to me, that already puts you at a position to where you're a better player than Cam Thomas coming out of the draft. So,
I haven't watched every game he played this year for the most part. He could defend better than Cam. I would still say his defense is
below
leaky.
average.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But when you're just comparing the player next to each other in terms of when they were coming out of college, Johnson beats him in every category,
Yeah,
except for the points per game number, of course. But when you look at the shot selection that he takes, it's much cleaner than what Cam Thomas was taking in college. In terms of efficiency, I believe it was also better. In terms of playmaking, rebounding, it's also better. He's far from a cone defensively, but it's still not great enough to where he can probably start year one. They'll probably have him coming off the bench in Toronto. But to me, long-term fit-wise, if you can have two high-caliber scorers in Ingram and Johnson next to a top-tier point forward in Scotty Barnes, and if they eventually move in on a direction for a center, whether they decide to move off of Jakob or keep him, I think they're going to have a lot of upside in the East. So to me, Trey Johnson's a clear pick there for them.
Would you say the inside scoring is like his weakest part of his offense?
Yeah,
because I know
probably.
He doesn't draw a lot of fouls. I noticed that.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. I mean, can we really hate on that? I feel like as NBA fans recently, we want to see more guys being able to score without needing free throws. So I don't necessarily hate that. I think he'll learn that and develop it very easily in the NBA, like everybody does. But yeah, I would definitely say his inside scoring is maybe the most questionable portion of his game. But when you have such a good mid-range and three-point shot, to me, do you really have to drive in at that point?
I want to address John's question real quick because I got some questions too. If we draft Trey, who is the point guard? And please don't say D'Lo. It might be D'Lo. Trey is 6'6", but he's pure. He's a 2. He can handle the ball. Would you try him at the 1? Could you move him to the 3 and keep D'Lo at the 1 and Cam at the 2? Because he does kind of. If that did take Trey, he does kind of fill the same space as Cam. How would they work that if they did take Trey?
I don't think it works at all. I would not recommend it. I think we've seen the experiment enough of trying to make a 2 into a 1. It doesn't work 9 times out of 10.
Could they make
There's
him a
no
3?
reason for it.
Could they make him a 3?
No. Too undersized and not good defensively enough to play the 3. Like, to me, if you want a guy that can play the 3 who's maybe a little bit smaller size-wise, like later in the second round, a guy like Hugo Gonzalez, he's 6'6", but he's got a better frame. He's better defensively. So to me, there's certain guys that you can transition into smaller 3s. Trey Johnson's not one of them. He's got to be a specific 2. And if he can't do that, then there's not going to be much time for him in the league.
I tend to agree. All right, you want to get on to who's that? Miami. This is an interesting pick. Miami at 8.
Miami at 7, and I feel like this is kind of a perfect fit for him. Go Kasparis Jakubonis. To me, they need a point guard, and he is very similar in terms of a Tyler Hero, but less effective on the offensive end in terms of scoring. It really depends on what they want to do moving forward, right? Do they want to continue trying to develop Hero as a 1 and turning him into like a Devin Booker-like player? Or do they want to give him more freedom as a scorer and a guy that can shoot off of the pass, right? Kasparis Jakubonis could be that guy for them. Jakubonis' playmaking, his rebounding, he's an above-average height in terms of a point guard. You can interchange them at the point guard and shooting guard position, so I think that's a really good fit for them in Miami. And not to mention, whoever they draft 9 times out of 10 become great in terms of whatever role they play, right? Whether it's becoming a star, whether it's becoming a high-caliber 3-and-D player, a great veteran off the bench. Whatever they do in Miami, it works every time. So Jakubonis to me at 7 there is a perfect fit.
It's 8. It's 8. It's 8.
It was 8?
Toronto,
Yeah,
it's
8. Yeah, that's a perfect pick.
So Chicago at 9. This is an interesting pick because I don't know where they go with this. I really have no clue where they would go with this pick.
Yeah, it's extremely tough to figure out what they're going to go with because do they pay Giddey this offseason? Do they look to move off of Kobe White? Do they look to move off of Vucevic? Like, there's a lot of question marks with what they have. I think the person that does end up getting moved, though, is a guy like Patrick Williams. So for me at pick number 9, I'm going to have them take Asa Newell. He can space the floor. It's not effective just yet, but it's got a ton of potential. To me, he's a more upside version of a Noah Clowney. But the defensive tangibles are there. Even though he's a smaller framed 4 in terms of weight, the height truly does help, and his athleticism does as well. That's why he's pulling roughly 7 rebounds a night. So to me, it's a good fit for them there. He's also another player that has a ton of upside. Number
10, San Antonio, who you all always going to pick much higher than 10. They're probably going to draft in the top 4 because we need Wemby to be a superstar and for San Antonio to be relevant. But here, they're drafting 10.
Yeah.
Where do they go with this pick?
I'm going to switch it up a bit here. The rankings that we have here haven't been updated in over 2 months. That's why I've kind of had my big board updated left and right. But if you scroll down a bit, you'll see a player along the names of Colin Murray Boyles, and I think that is an absolutely incredible fit for what San Antonio needs. At 6'7", he's an undersized 4, but he is a defensive menace. You're talking Draymond Green caliber defense at his height. And to me, San Antonio needs a bruiser to help out Wemby down low. So to me, Colin Murray Boyles makes a ton of sense there.
Okay, I thought you were going to go Queen there. You're going to go, okay.
I am. I think that they can look to move in on a backup center in free agency or through the trade market. I think, maybe there's a world they go after Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe. You never know. So it's tough to say exactly, but I would definitely have Colin Murray Boyles as a better fit for them, especially because they're in that position now where they've gone all in. They want to win now. They still have enough assets to potentially trade for a guy like Kevin Durant. Let's just say they do. It's now time to put the win now pieces around him. And I think Colin Murray Boyles is a guy that you could plug in immediately in replacement to like a Jeremy Sochan who could be moved in a Kevin Durant deal. So to me, I think Boyles is a perfect fit for them. They need defense if they go after a guy like KD.
Now we move on to Portland at 11. I think there's a couple of interesting fits here. This is interesting because they're a team that's on the come up right now. Like they were horrible, and now they're winning games left and right. I'm interested. They have some interesting pieces. They have some young guys. Where would Portland go?
See, and people are going to probably not like this a lot, but I think that he's risen his draft stock enough. He could be a potential top 10 pick, depending on if OKC gets that Philly pick. I actually have him going as high as 7 if they do, and that's Concanepple. He has risen his draft stock to me. He showed clear signs when Cooper Flag is not playing that he can be a viable offensive piece. And at 6'7", he can also defend very well. So yeah, Concanepple to Portland. I absolutely love the fit there for them. It was either going to be Austin Newell or Colin Murray Boyles. And if both of those guys are off the board like we have here, you got to go Concanepple.
It's amazing how Troy has dropped this much. Like he's not even. I don't even see him on this thing.
Yeah, I think they have him in the late 20s.
And he was supposed to be a top 5 guy before the season, so he's really tanked his stock. All right, Dallas.
One question very quickly, Gary.
Go ahead.
One question very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, with Knoepel, this is my one and only question. What makes him better than like a better playmaking Tyler Hero or a better playmaking Joe Harris? Because I watch the games, and that's all I keep on seeing. What am I missing here?
I don't think you're missing anything. I don't see him as a number 1 or 2 option. I could see him being a high caliber 3rd option, similar trajectory as maybe a guy like Austin Reeves. There's nothing flashy about his game, but if you compare the numbers of him and Klay Thompson in their first years in college, it is extremely similar, like scary similar. So to me, I can see Concanepple at his peak of his career as a potential Klay Thompson-like player, which in today's modern NBA, maybe 10 years ago, that could have been your second option. But in today's modern NBA, I see that being a high caliber 3rd option.
Here's another interesting one. And I know Queen doesn't make any sense for them at all. But I can't see Queen continuing to drop this far. But we're at Dallas.
Yeah. We're going Queen here. And I actually think it makes perfect sense because I do see them trying to move off of some salary to fill out the rotation a bit better. Gafford is a name that has been mentioned to potentially be a trade candidate. Lively either can't stay healthy or can't guard an actual 5. So to me, Derek Queen is a clear and obvious fit for them there.
So they got Lively, they got AD, they got Gafford, and you know what I'm saying? Like they got guys that fill the space of the big at the 4 and the 5. Mm-hmm. I was looking at guys like McNeely. Like that's where I thought they were going to go. Or the French kid.
I actually have McNeely outside of the lottery right now.
Okay.
Do you think Queen could be good as a secondary piece? Because I'm looking at his usage rate. It's very, very high. And I understand, yes, of course, he's a great player playing on a college team. Of course, you're going to give the ball to your best player. But does he need the ball? Dylan?
Did we lose Dylan?
We might have lost Dylan. He will be remembered.
He will.
So I'll keep on talking until Dylan gets back. But yeah,
Oh,
like
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, here you
Okay.
go. Did you hear my question?
I did not know. I'm sorry. I had to
It's all
go
good. It's all
turn on the
good.
fan. It's hot as hell in here.
I'll make it very short. He has a very high usage rate. Does he need the ball to be effective?
Derek Queen?
Yeah.
I don't think he needs the ball to be effective. To me, I see Sengun in him. He's got I see like a mixture of a Sengun and a DeMarcus Cousins. He's dominant down low because he has the size. He's able to put the ball on the floor. He's able to play make. He can stretch the floor. You know, there's a lot of upside with him there. I actually think he's a perfect fit next to a guy like Anthony Davis because he's an undersized 5 but can still guard 5s. That allows Anthony Davis to play the full-time 4, which he bitches and moans about all the time. So to me, I think it's a really good fit for them long term, especially if they do want to try and go all in. There's been rumors about Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanting to play together again. So, who knows if they decide to try and package up guys like Lively, Gafford, and PJ Washington for, Kevin Durant. Who knows? But to me, I think Queen and AD long-term fits are very good.
Now we get to Houston at 13. This is the pick from the Suns.
Click on point
Relevant to the
guard for
Nets.
me.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be interesting for a lot of people. Scroll down a bit. I don't know why they haven't. So this is how long it's been since they've updated it. Jace Richardson, his stock has been flying upwards, and I truly don't understand why. Maybe one of you guys know a little bit better. I've tried watching his games. I don't see anything significant as to why he would potentially be a lottery pick, but a ton of draft experts, scouts, mock drafts, all of them have him going in the lottery. Some of them have him going top 10. I don't see it. I see him as a better defensive version as like a Tyrese Maxey, which again I don't think is a first option in the NBA, but I think it is a perfect fit for Houston at 13. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on it, but at 6'3", he is much better as a defender than a lot of people at his height. But he also has that floor spacing ability, catch and shoot, has the handles, has the playmaking upside as like a Tyrese Maxey. So, I mean, I could see why draft experts want him to go that high. I just don't know if he will. I think he will because I think there's going to be a team that wants his upside. I think if it is anybody, it is going to be either Houston or Atlanta at 13 or 14.
The upside. He wasn't on my radar until the tournament started, so I only saw him play a little bit. I don't have a ton of thoughts on him, but yeah, he looks like a good catch and shoot guy. Looks like he can handle the ball. I'm not over, and this is why we have you because this is more your forte. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who he was really. I mean, only his name up until the tournament started, and now, yeah, he's a lottery guy. So I'm going to go with your word on this. Pete, any thoughts on Jace Richards?
Nope. Next pick.
Atlanta, 14.
Atlanta's tough, right? You miss out on Derek Queen. You miss out on Kaman Malawak. You miss out on a high-caliber point guard in terms of just lottery projection, right? I think they're going to have to reach on a pick here, and it comes down to one of two. It's either Igor Demon or it's Ben Seraph. And that's where I'm kind of stuck, right? Realistically, I do think Trae Young gets traded this offseason. There's already been rumors about it. I think he's gone. So to me, it depends on what they want. Do they want a guy who can play the 1 and the 2? Or do they want a guy who can simply just play make his ass off and has upside as a scorer? I think you have to go with the upside here. So I'm going to have Igor Demon end off the lottery at 14.
I'm a huge Igor Demon fan. I had him in my top 10 early in the year. His shooting has really scared me to the point that I have him dropped maybe even a little lower than this.
Yeah, in most mock drafts, I have
does that scare you enough? And also, I think another player that I think people have said like not great first step. Do those two things really hamper him?
A bit, yeah. I definitely think there's a shooting mechanics issue with what he does. Something that could be fixed, but the playmaking is just so elite at his age that you kind of have to take it, right? You have Atlanta specifically, you have Onyeka Okongwu, you have Jalen Johnson playing the 4, you have Risha Shar at the 3, and who do they have at the 2? I'm going blank. They have somebody.
We get it.
Regardless, the point guard, if they trade Trae Young, is the biggest need. And I think that's where they go, whether it's Ben Seraph, Jace Richardson, or Igor Demon. But yeah, that's kind of just where I have him falling right now. I do usually in most mock drafts have him falling anywhere between 14 and 20.
All right. Let's keep this moving along. Let's get to Orlando at 15.
See, and usually I have a specific player mocked here to him, but again, this one has risen up draft boards so much in terms of upside that I think they kind of have to take him. It's Noah Osengwu. To me, I would usually have Liam McNeely go here, but again, his inefficiencies have really scared me throughout this entire season. I think as a whole, McNeely has shot like 38.5% from the field. To me, Orlando's in a position where they kind of need a guy that you can plug in immediately. Playing overseas automatically tops playing in college, right? You're playing against pros, you're playing against older players. You can kind of just immediately get in there as a guy off the bench. So to me, Noah Osengwu has that upside to really help out Orlando. His floor spacing could definitely be an improvement, and that's something that they actually need tremendously. But I think that's something that he'll be able to do his rookie season. So I would have him over Liam McNeely there.
All right. Where are we at now? We are at San Antonio again at 16.
And
Liam McNeely's still there.
Yeah, because they selected Murray Boyles, I don't see a need as to why they go wing. So to me, I'm going Ben Seraph here. You need a playmaker off the bench for when Chris Paul either inevitably retires or walks in free agency. I don't think they're going to want to bring him back unless if it's for a league minimum. So to me, at 6'6", again, another overseas guy. They're just building the international pool over in San Antonio. I think it's a perfect fit for them. He's a combo guard who played a 1 and 2. I'm sorry?
What about Nolan Touré here? No, not at all.
Who?
The problem I keep hearing about Noah Touré is that he sucks. Like, that's the problem I keep hearing.
I just don't see it. I have him going in a little bit. I just don't see him going this high yet.
Will you still have him as a first rounder? I've heard people have him not as a first rounder anymore.
Oh, I have him as a first rounder. I got him in the top 22. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the upside's still there. A team's going to want that, especially because the point guard slimmed down so much after him, right? A team may want to
still take him over Boogie? You'd still take him over Boogie?
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Unless Boogie goes off in this upcoming round, then we'll see. So at pick number 17,
Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue to have him fall. Go Nick Clifford here. I think this is a perfect fit for exactly what. Actually, wait. Oh, no, we'll go with it. I'm cool with that. It's so hard to
Nick Clifford before yesterday. You know who he is now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an absolute dog. I mean, it's so tough to try and figure out what they want there for Minnesota because they could go Rasheer Fleming, they could go McNeely, they could go Clifford. To me, they have Jaden McDaniels, so you can kind of move off from Naz Reid and have no worries, right? Because he is an undersized 4 to begin with. That's why I was kind of contemplating going Fleming or not there. But to me, Nick Clifford is just, he's a winner, and they need a winning mentality type of player there. So I think you can't miss in Minnesota if you land one of McNeely, Fleming, or Clifford. In terms of fit, though, I think Clifford's the best one.
And I would get to Oklahoma City. This is an interesting pick because Oklahoma City is so deep and they're so stacked. The guy that they draft, is he going to have much of a role? Like, after Dylan tells us who they're going to pick, let's see what his role is going to be. Because I would not want to be drafted to Oklahoma City because I'm not going to play, right?
For
but
let's
see.
Yeah. See, so here's my problem with OKC, right? If I'm the GM of OKC, I'm personally thinking, okay, maybe it's time I take this team a little bit more seriously and stop fucking around with upside players for so long. They have such a great team, but they are going to lose in the playoffs every single year because of their lack of experience and the lack of veterans, right? So until they move their picks and really put another superstar next to SGA and Chet, because I don't think Jalen Williams is the option there as your third option, especially long-term with the contract that he's going to get. I think you need to start drafting more seriously. And to me, because of how good of a contender they are, they reach here and go for Danny Wolf, center out of Michigan. I think this is the Isaiah Hartenstein replacement at some point when they can't afford him because they have to pay SGA $70+ million. They have to pay Jalen Williams $35+ million. Chet's already on a rookie max extension, I believe. If not, he's due. So to me, you have to go with a guy that you can plug in immediately and make an impact. And that for me is Danny Wolf.
I think that's a good pick for him. A pick that makes a lot of sense. And now we are. No, we're not. Okay. Utah. I think we're back on our pick. Okay. Utah Jazz, 19.
Yeah, this is another tough pick. To me, it really depends. What do they want to go with, right? Do they want to continue going with upside, or do they want to find a Walker Kessler replacement? I think that Danny Ainge is stingy enough to where he's going to want to keep Walker Kessler long term. So for me, I'm going to have them select Liam McNeely here. He's fallen enough,
Okay.
but you got to go grab one of the best high upside shooters in this year's draft class.
And now we're up at 20 with Milwaukee's pick that we got from the Knicks. Picking at 20, I know who I want here. And then Wolf going to OKC. Does he have a role carved out, or is he sitting on the pine for a while in OKC?
I think it really depends. Depending on the minutes that Chet can play, right? If he is a guy that can play that 34 plus a game, you can change. You can kind of interchange around Chet to move him to the full-time 4 and have Hartenstein start off at the 5 next to him and have Wolf coming off the bench as the 5 next to him. I think in terms of health and the way to keep him healthy, Chet specifically, you need to play him at the 4. So I think grabbing a backup full-time 5 to play good minutes around him is something that you need. And also, not to mention, Wolf has that playmaking aspect to his game that can open up Chet a bit more as a stretch 4. So I like the Wolf fit there for them, especially even if they have to reach on it. You kind of you need to take your contending window a bit more seriously in OKC.
All right, so we've reached the next second pick, the Milwaukee pick. Mm-hmm. I know who I want at this point, but I'm good with either of two guys. Let's see if you touch on either of those two guys.
Oh, it's the top 2 on the board. You already know.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
To me, unfortunately, because there's a certain player that's going to probably be there at 26, you have to go ahead and take Sorber there at 20. He is a top 16 pick talent, but because of that injury, maybe he falls. Maybe I'm being a bit too generous here with him, but there were players before him that I kind of just couldn't take before taking him. And to me, it kind of just falls into the lap of Brooklyn at 20. So for me, this is a no-brainer. Thomas Sorber, a high upside big man. I actually think he has more upside as an all-around big man than Derek Queen does. Queen has a bit of a issue defensively. But if you look at the weight, if you look at the build, if you look at the offensive and defensive tangibles that Sorber has, he is an NBA big man. Even at 6'10", I will absolutely love what he has for him. So that's a no-brainer for me at 20.
Miami is back on the clock at 21. You make the pick, Dylan. I got to go take a leak. I'll be right back.
I was going to say, I don't know if I have access to it. Well, we'll just talk about it then until.
Keep on going, yeah. Actually, we can talk about the Nets pick since you guys are a Nets podcast.
Yeah, let's talk about the Nets picks real quick.
Yeah.
So what do they have on here? 26 and 27, I believe.
I was going to say, I think that's a fair pick with Sorber, if I'm saying his name right. Personally, what I would look at, I would maybe want to trade down, but since we're not doing trades here, if you don't take Sorber, then what do you think about maybe a draft stash? I'm in love with this guy. I know this is extremely raw. I'm going for a high upside. I would consider taking Hugo here. I really would.
I got Hugo falling into the 38 through 46 range.
Oh, you're really down on him.
Yeah, I think that there is too many risers in this year's class, and especially when you look at the late first round and even the early second round, there's a lot of teams like Minnesota, Phoenix, Los Angeles. Boston has 2 picks. Actually, Minnesota has 2 picks, so that's already 6 picks. You have Miami here at 21. Who else do you have in here in the mid?
Oh, you know what? You know what, Dylan? I lied. You know who I would consider taking here? This is a reach, and since Gary's gone, I'm going to say this. I love Johnny Broom.
I don't mind him. It's just if you miss out on Sorber, yes, I agree. That's
fair.
But to me, you don't take him unless if Derek Queen, Sorber, and Malawak are off the board.
Is it the age that scares you, or the shooting?
No, it's honestly not the age. It's more so just the fit. I think that he has a little bit too much of a confidence to him that may get shut down very easily in a Jordy system. I need guys who are here to come work and improve as players. I think Janai Broom is more of a locker room issue than anything. So I'm not big usually on saying guys are locker room issues, but I don't know if I like the fit for him in Brooklyn. But with the 21st pick, we are going to go Rasheer Fleming to Miami. I mean, if they land Kasparis and Rasheer Fleming, I'd hate my life because that's just such a beast of a draft to have as a team who already has Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, and Bam Adebayo, and Khalil Ware. So they're just loading up on great fits for them. But yeah, I absolutely love that pick for them. And this is actually where I'm going to have Jedi Broom go. Indiana, they need a Miles Turner replacement, and I think you have to go with somebody who's relatively a position of need. So to me, Jedi Broom can space the floor similar to what Miles Turner was able to do. Not as good of a rim protector, but a bit of a bully down low to where he can grab rebounds efficiently and effectively. So I absolutely love that pick for them there.
Is he a center or power forward?
I think you can play him at both. He's got the athleticism to play the 4 with the 3-ball ability, but he's also got the strength and the athleticism to also play the 5. So I think you can kind of filter him in and out depending on what they need. Who is up here at, what is this, 24?
23, we got the legendary Washington Wizards.
And we had them go flag, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, give him Nolan Traore here. Have to. I think focusing on Jordan Poole as a potential 2 guard rather than a 1 opens up the ability for Cooper Flagg and Traore to develop. You know, you got a guy that can focus on scoring and Poole, but you have other guys who can be backup scorers to him in their first years and also work on the other aspects to their game. So I absolutely love that fit for them there.
2 quick questions on him. The comps to Killian Hayes is killing me. 2 questions. Why has he dropped so much? This was thought to be a top 5 guy before the season started. And does he suck at basketball?
Definitely doesn't suck at basketball.
Okay,
yes,
good.
He drops tremendously. Yeah, I think it's just some guys can take playing in the Euro League, some guys can't. And it was his first season really playing in like a pro level setting. It's kind of like having a rookie year. To me, he's going to come into the NBA, an easier place to score, a less defensive physical place to play. And I think he's going to perform similar to what people were projecting him at originally. I don't think he's going to be better than the top 5 guys, but I can definitely see a lot of teams regretting not taking him in that like 12 through 18 range. So if you can get him there at 23 or 24, whatever we just had him, I think that's an absolute steal.
It's 23. 24 is Atlanta. Where does Atlanta go?
Oh, that's tough. That's not a great spot for them. I mean, you would think. I mean, who do we have them taking the first? Igor?
I was just gonna ask you. We went Igor, right?
We went Igor. Okay, all right. So then this isn't as hard. A guy that's a sleeper. I personally, once again, don't agree with a lot of analysts in saying that he is a first-round talent. But I'm going to have them select him because I do think they have a ton of offensive talent, so they need more defense. And that's a guy like Noah Penda. So you're going to have to look up, I believe, small forwards because he shouldn't be first-round projected.
Is he get 2 or 3 here? Is he as a 2? As a 3?
He should be listed
here
as 3.
We got him.
Yeah.
Got him. Yep.
Yeah, Noah Penda, 6'8", 6'9", out of France, high caliber defender. I think that's something that they kind of need. Rishashar has shown that he could be a consistent scorer around that 18 to 22 a game. Jalen Johnson's going to be taking a leap, especially if a guy like Trae Young's gone next year. You have Igor as a rookie to facilitate. I think grabbing a high caliber defender is a key for them. And that puts us at what, Orlando at 25?
25 at Orlando.
Yeah, you can't have him slip any further. You got to go Will Riley here. I would have loved to see him fall to the Nets at 26, but I think, again, Orlando's that team that needs to focus on upside wings that also can help them space the floor. And to me, Will Riley fits the description perfectly. Yeah, you can see they haven't updated this in forever. I think he's in like that 45 range. Yeah, a little bit further.
There he is. Here he is.
Yeah, they haven't updated this in over 2 months. But yeah, Will Riley, Illinois, small forward. This is quite literally a slap in the face combination of Cam Johnson and Trey Murphy. I don't see anything else in him. I think he's just a high caliber role player that's going to knock down a ton of tough shots. The athleticism is there. I absolutely love him as a prospect.
All right, there we go. Oh wait, yep, we're back on the clock. 26.
Yeah, I think we have back to back here.
Yeah.
I'm taking a quick peek at my big board to see if there's anybody that I would reach on a bit.
So far we have Sorber and Fears. So far I like our draft. If this
I think
Sorber and Fears.
I think you have to go with upside and fit here, and both of those picks being JT Toppin and Carter Bryant at 26.
JT Toppin was exactly who I was going to say. There you go.
Yeah, he's going to be projected in the mid to late second round. Yeah, you may have to scroll for a while for him.
JT
Yeah, so-
Toppin at Texas Tech. We've got to see a lot of him. He's played really well so far in the tournament. What can you tell us about JT Toppin?
Explosive. I mean, if you talk about a guy who is probably the second best fit at the 4 spot outside of Rasheer Fleming, this is him. Gritty, high caliber defender, explosive rebounder, an incredible finisher above the rim, and he can also shoot the 3 unlike his brother coming out of college. So to me, perfect Jordy Fernandez fit, a guy that could really help out Noah Clowney. I believe Toppin is a sophomore. So he's not too old to where he still doesn't have
He
a ton
played
of
at New
upside.
Mexico with Rick Pitino Jr. So he's at
Yeah.
least a sophomore. It's not a junior. Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, I think that this just kind of adds that bit of veteran presence that you want. Maybe not as much of a need to focus in terms of development, but a guy that you can plug in right away off the bench, give you some high caliber minutes as well. So I love the upside of Toppin as a potential stretch 4 and just like a bully for a guy that can post you up down low, that can defend. His athleticism is going to make up for his height in the post. So to me, I absolutely love the pick there. And then Carter Bryant was towards the top. I want to say he was the second player there. I got to go.
I
with
want
him there.
this. All right. I want to boogie at this pick.
I know. I can't double up on the point guards.
All right.
I can't do
I was
it.
gonna say one quick question. We have to draft people here, right? So we
Yeah.
can't do any trades, but in reality, right? Would you guys say in reality that you'd rather either get a draft stash or a trade, maybe get a first rounder next year instead of having 3-4 rookies? I think that's what
I
want,
definitely
this
think
is
you
just
can see a scenario where they. So here's the main scenarios that I have. I see 3 main trade partners for Brooklyn to move up. That's Miami with the 21st pick, San Antonio at 16, and Houston with that Phoenix pick. Those are the 3 main teams that I can see potential trades with Brooklyn. And the San Antonio one at 16 is Brooklyn giving up Cam Johnson and pick 27 for pick 16 and a future protected first round pick. So to me, I think you can fill that additional first round pick need if you move on from Cam Johnson with San Antonio. With Miami, I had them moving pick 27 and 35 for pick 20. What was it, 22 at the time that I did it? They're now at 21. So it was 27 and 35 for pick 21 and like 2 future second round picks. I think that's another thing that could potentially be on the table. So there's a couple of trade assets that I can see. Even OKC potentially, if they want, a future first round pick for their pick at 20, if you want to move up from those late 20s spots and then trade one of those picks back for a future pick. There's a lot of scenarios that are out there, but because we're not doing trades in this one, I'm kind of just sticking and picking with players that I think are perfect fits, not only for this upcoming season, but for the long term as well.
All right. Quick question. Could we start our 4 first? Hypothetically, I don't think we're going to draft 4 times in the first round, but if we did, can we just plug Cam Thomas in and start these 4 guys? So Fierce, Cam, Carter Bryant, JT Toppin, and Sorber. Could that be a starting 5?
Dude, I would be happier to watch that than I have been watching any game this season. So yes, I would love to see it just because, again, so many people have been saying this where, oh, well, Jordy Fernandez did so great with no talent. What makes you think that he's going to do better with a young talent? The key word there is young, and young players in the NBA don't know how to win games. So to me, the younger you are, the higher likely chance you have of a top 5 pick next year. And to me, a top 5 pick next year is way more important than overachieving like we did this year. Next year's draft class within the top 5, you are going to grab your wing of the future, whether it is AJ DeBonsta, Cam Boozer, Noah Ament. Shit, Darren Peterson can play the 2 if he really wanted to. He's 6'5", 6'6", and still growing. Like, to me, you have opportunities next year to draft the superstar wing. This year's draft class, you got to land a potential star big man and point guard while filling out the wing depth, right? Because Jalen Wilson doesn't look like a long-term fit. Noah Clowney, probably a trade candidate in terms of if we ever go for a superstar. So to me, you got to fill the other needs. And I think this draft class, what we've done within the first 4 picks, does that perfectly.
Pete, what are your thoughts on this draft? That was our last pick. If this is what we ended up with, Sorber.
I was gonna say we have the second round pick if we want to do it, but because we got about 15
next
minutes.
time. You got a long off season. Save it.
Yeah,
we got Fears, Sorber, and then Bryant and Toppin. How would you feel about that draft class, Pete?
Very happy with the top half. In the back half, I'm a big. Like Dylan said, you don't want to double up on the point guards, but I'm a huge believer in Boogie Flynn.
I am too. He's one of my favorite players.
And I would really like to see a draft stash When you were gone, I said this to Dylan. This is all raw. I know this might be a little crazy to a lot of people, but I think Hugo Gonzalez in the right place, if he develops, would be a monster. And I'd love to stash him if possible, maybe with like that second round pick even. But I would not be upset if they took him with like, I don't know, with our last first rounder, if they believed in him, of course.
Yeah, like I said, it definitely depends. I don't know. There's players that I'm high on. There's players that I'm not. Hugo's one of those guys that I'm not high on specifically because of how inefficient he has been. Um, the upside doesn't seem as great. Carter Bryant, to me, is one of the 5 rawest prospects in this year's class. If you watched Arizona play last night, he was a key focal point on defense. His offensive ability is there. He just needs it to be unlocked a bit more. At 6'8", 225 at the age of 18, that to me you can't teach. And if you can actually teach the basics and simplistics of basketball to him, you're going to be getting a high caliber player from it. So I think that he's an absolute steal if you get him at 27. JT Toppin, again, it's more so just for fit. Who's our backup 4, realistically, right? It was DFS and Clowney running the 4s. Jalen Wilson may or may not be on the team. Zaire Williamson, I don't see why he should be playing the 4. So to me, I think getting a backup 4 is a good fit, especially when you want to help the improvements of Noah Clowney and kind of solidify his minutes being more impactful rather than overexerting him in terms of conditioning wise. So because we've seen him get injured this year too. But yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on what route you want to go with the second round pick. If Boogie Flan is there at 35, fucking take him and run. In the second round for a majority of the drafts that I'm doing, I believe I'm looking at, who am I looking at? If you pull up the board again, I may be able to see, but actually I'll pull up my big board as well. Around the range that we're at, Dink Pate is a guy that I'm looking at. Alex Caravan is another guy that I'm looking at. There's guys like Isaiah Evans, Drake Powell, Miles Bird. Those are mainly the guys that I'm looking at within the range that we'll be in within the second round. So Addo Thiaro, if he somehow falls, I doubt he does. I believe he's going to be one of the first 2 picks in the second round because Minnesota and Boston are fighting for that right now. So it's really going to depend on who's there at 35. But for me, if you can land one of Boogie, Dink, Caravan, Isaiah Evans, Miles Bird, or Drake Powell, that's a home run draft class.
Yeah,
and I just messed up. I just closed out of the drafts. My bad, guys. I don't know. I just killed
no,
it.
No worries.
I don't know. But we got through the Nets pick, which was the important thing. We'll do a full 2-round mock in the future. I apologize. I closed out of it. I don't even know what happened.
No worries. I was going to say
go through all these picks. It's a lot of picks, right? You want to go in depth with them. And if I could get to it, well, one thing on Boogie Flynn, this is like a secondary source, but I trust this person. This person talks to one of his coaches. Keep in mind he's from the Bronx, right? So he has local ties here. They love him. They said he's a gym rat. He's a workaholic. And just hearing that, I might be biased here, but I just kept that sounded like beautiful music to me. He sounds like a culture changer, was what someone told me.
I completely agree. I love Boogie as a prospect.
I love that.
I absolutely love what he's brought this season. The efficiencies have been an issue, but I definitely think that's something that could be easily fixed. The upside for him as a prospect is through the roof. And he was also a guy that was projected to be around that Jace Richardson range earlier in the season, right? That like 13 through 18 caliber pick. So to me, I think he still has the upside to do it. It's just there's so many risers in this draft class, especially if you draft one of either Yakachonis, Harper, or Jeremiah Fears. I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose and need of a Boogie Flan. I think it kind of derails some of the development that you could have for both of the players that you end up picking if you decide to go double point guard. You also have to remember Brooklyn has a ton of cap space this offseason. I don't think that they're going to try and double up on positions that aren't wing positions, right? You have Claxton and you have Sharp as a restricted free agent. Depending on if you bring Sharp back, you bring in his replacement, whether it's Malawak, Sorber, or Queen. So like right there, you're good. Jalen Wilson, question mark. Zaire Williams, unrestricted free agent. There's no guarantee that he's back. So to me, for this draft class specifically, a point guard, a center, and 2 wings are the baseline to what you have to go with in the first 4 picks that you have. That's if they keep all 5, right? That second round pick, take best available, whether it be Boogie, Dink, Caravan, Powell, some of the other names that I mentioned. Go for it. But to me, in my eyes, I think next year's class, if you take the tank seriously, is the class that you go all in on one of those top prospect wings, whether it's the Banstead, Boozer, Ament, Peterson, Gaskins, Wilson. There's a ton of prospects at the wing position next year in the top 10 that could change your franchise. So that's kind of my outlook on it.
All right, guys. I gotta wrap this up. Pete, Dylan, thank you for your time. Any closing thoughts on this, Pete? Your thoughts on the draft? I close it out the last 3 picks, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Pete, Dylan, any closing thoughts? Anything you guys want to add?
No,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
just-
it's fun
go
to
ahead.
it's fun to see what the different avenues are for Brooklyn, right? I think in the beginning of the year, if you told me this was our draft class, I'd be throwing up. But the more that I've looked into it, the more that I've done my part in finding out some of these players, the realization that we're not landing top 3 is more so for me now than it ever has been. I'm not getting my hopes up. The dream for me is dead. If it happens, it happens. But to me, I personally would prefer, if it's not Flag or Harper, I'd actually prefer Fears over Ace in terms of fit wise. So I don't know. Maybe falling to this position in that 5 through 7 range is more of a blessing in disguise. We'll see. But it's all going to get answered on May 12th. So we'll find out very shortly.
And Pete, one more time, tell everyone where they can find you. When do you have another episode of your pod coming out?
Sometime this week, I'm going to throw out something. I got episode 100 coming on. I got a great guest. And that's it. Check out my Twitter, NetFans, YouTube, NetFans, I talk to insiders, beat writers, talk to guys like Gary and Dylan, who are great fans and give us this great content and stuff, all good stuff like that.
All right, appreciate you. I'll be back with John tomorrow at 12:30. Dylan, are you in the office tomorrow? You're gonna be able to join us tomorrow.
Unfortunately, I am stuck in the hellhole, so I will be in the office tomorrow.
Oh, good. Pete, you free tomorrow at 12:30?
I might be. You know me. If I'm here, I'm here. If I'm not here,
All
then
right.
I'm not here.
Appreciate your time. So maybe Pete tomorrow, but I'll be live with at least John and I tomorrow. Maybe Pete. We're gonna try to get Pete to join us tomorrow. The Nets play the Mavs today. Could be a win. Looks like the Mavs aren't gonna have to forfeit, so the game should be on. Real quick, and the Nets have they have the Clippers, but they got a bunch of winnable games. They got 2 with the Mavs. They got the Wiz. Like they got a lot of winnable games. Let me pull up real quick and get you guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I got us finishing 4-7 for the remainder of the season with 27 wins.
Do you guys see Toronto's schedule? They got Charlotte twice. I think they got us again.
Yeah,
I think they got the 76ers
but
again. They
Look at
got
what
a
they're doing
very
against
easy
Philly
schedule.
right now, though.
Philadelphia is my main concern.
I was going to say, look at what Toronto just did, though, tonight against Philly. They were pretty much sitting their entire team. So far tonight for the injury report between Toronto and Philly, you have, let's see, if I can ever scroll down enough.
Just play Reese
Lonnie
Beekman
Walker
all
on
48 minutes. Just play Reese Beekman all 48.
Look at this. Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Quentin Grimes, Andre Drummond, and Lonnie Walker are all out for Philly. And then for Toronto, you have Chris Boucher out, RJ Barrett. That looks to be it. Maybe Toronto does pick up a win today, but I actually would more so hope for Philly.
Me
So
too.
we'll see.
So here's the upcoming schedule. We got Dallas winnable game, Toronto winnable game, the Clippers, that's a loss, the Wizards winnable game, and then Dallas again. I'm not saying 4-1, but like you guys could see 4-1 is on the table here, right? I mean, so is 0-5, but 4-1 is definitely on the table here.
Go ahead, Dylan.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that real quick? I had to answer a word now.
Just real quick. Dallas tonight, then Toronto, then the Clippers, that's a loss. Washington and Dallas again.
2-2
I'm
within the
not
first
saying
4
it's
games.
It could be 4-1. It could be 0-5,
It
but it could
genuinely
be 4-1 too. I mean,
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean-
this is make or break here. This is
Listen,
what it
I
comes down
would
to.
do disgraceful things to Anthony Davis to make sure that he plays tonight or tomorrow night, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope this fucking guy comes back and destroys us, but again, knowing the Nets and knowing how much of a terrorist Jordy Fernandez is in terms of not wanting to actually gain talent through the draft, I could 100% see us winning that game. So I got us beating Dallas, losing to Toronto, losing to the Clippers, and then beating Washington within those first 4 games. But like I said, I think 4-7 is the final 11 games. 27 wins, probably the 7th seed in terms of odds. I truly do think Toronto and Philly will take this more seriously than we do.
I think they're going to win 3 games.
The season is over. Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think they're going to win 3 games out of the next 5 just because it's the Nets. They find a way to win games you want them to lose and vice versa. But I think Dylan might be right about the maybe 4 wins might be a little bit low, but maybe I think they will win maybe 6 more games this year. And I do think Philadelphia finishes ahead of us and for the lottery standings, but we do better than Toronto.
Why though? Like at this point, that you're not making the play-in. Why? Like when they got within a game with Chicago, I said, okay, well, you might as well go for the play. And then they lost like 7 in a row. And then I was like, okay, well, let's just lose it. Like, why? Like, just do what the other teams are doing. Like D'Lo and Cam Johnson don't need to play again this season.
For what it's worth, ESPN said we're going to be separated from Philadelphia by 1 game in their projected standings for the end of the year. So every game's going to count.
So I'm saying if we can go 1-4 here, that's huge for us. Like,
of course.
Let's go 1-4 over these next 5 games, and I think we're in great shape. But they're going to go 3-2. Like that's coming.
Hey, I hate to be that guy, but hopefully Cam Johnson's got some random ass injury that they sit him out for the year.
Don't play him again. Like, why would he play again?
It's really not hard. Yeah, it's really not hard.
Everybody else
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know why D'Angelo Russell, Cam Johnson, or Nick Claxton are continuing to play. And Zaire Williams, in all honesty. He's earned himself a contract, dude. Sit out. You're fucking us up. So
just play Nick Claxton and Reese Beekman 48 minutes. I promise you will lose.
Give me a starting 5 that consists of Reese Beekman. Give me Reese Beekman, Keon Johnson, Tyrese Martin, Jalen Wilson, and Nick Claxton as my starting 5. And I promise you we'll lose games.
We'll lose every game. All right, guys. Pete, Dylan, I'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate you guys jumping on. It's March 24th, 2025, from Texas to the world. Thank you, and God bless.